Story 1. The Convoy That Wasn't There. Michael Rivera had been driving for Schneider National for 19 years, and he prided himself on being part of the Brotherhood of the Road. The CB radio wasn't just equipment to him. It was his connection to other drivers, his lifeline during long, lonely nights, his source of camaraderie in an isolating profession. On November 8, 2021, that connection betrayed him in the most terrifying way possible. He was hauling electronics from Memphis to Denver, running I-40 west through Oklahoma. It was just past midnight, a cold November night with clear skies and light traffic. The kind of night where you could see every star, where the world felt vast and empty, where a driver could feel like the last person on Earth. His CB crackled to life. Breaker 19, this is Road King looking for westbound traffic on I-40. Anybody out there past Oklahoma City? Michael keyed his handset. Road King, this is Mountain Mike, westbound about 30 miles past the city. What's your 20? Mountain Mike, I'm about 10 miles behind you, running 75. Should catch up to you in a few minutes. You interested in forming a convoy? Always safer in numbers out here. Copy that, Road King. I'm running 70. I'll maintain speed. You can catch up. Appreciate it. Got 2 more drivers with me, Cargo Queen and Night Rider. We've been rolling together since Little Rock. Good group. Good company. Michael smiled. This was what the life was about. Strangers becoming temporary companions, sharing the road, watching out for each other. Sounds good. Always happy to have company. Over the next 10 minutes, 3 more voices joined the conversation. Cargo Queen had a warm, maternal voice, talking about her grandkids in Tulsa. Night Rider was younger, joking about the terrible coffee at the last truck stop. They chatted about routes, weather, the usual trucker talk that made the miles pass easier. We're coming up on you now, Mountain Mike, Road King said. Should see us in your mirrors any second. Michael checked his mirrors. The highway behind him was empty. No headlights, no running lights, nothing but darkness. Road King, I'm not seeing you yet. You sure you're close? Right behind you, buddy, maybe a quarter mile. You should see our lights. Michael checked again. Still nothing. Road King, my mirrors are showing empty road. You sure we're talking about the same highway? This is I-40 westbound, right? Affirmative, I-40 westbound. Mile marker 143. We're right here, Mountain Mike. Can see your trailer clear as day. A chill ran down Michael's spine. He was at mile marker 143, but there were no trucks behind him. He could see for miles in the clear night, no headlights, no vehicles of any kind. Road King, something's not right here. I can't see you. Cargo Queen's voice joined in, concerned. Mountain Mike, are you feeling okay? We're all right here with you. We can all see your truck. I'm telling you, there's nothing behind me. My mirrors are clear. Night Rider spoke up. Mountain Mike, maybe your mirrors are misaligned. Happened to me once after a loading dock incident. Couldn't see properly for a week before I got it fixed. Michael's mirrors were fine. He knew they were fine. He'd checked them at his last stop, as he always did. But 3 drivers were telling him they could see his truck were right behind him. How could they all be wrong? Road King, can you flash your lights? High beams on and off? Sure thing. There was a pause. Flashing now. Michael stared into his mirrors. No lights flashed. The highway remained empty and dark behind him. I didn't see anything. Mountain Mike, I flashed them 3 times. You should have seen it clear as day. Road King's voice had changed slightly, less friendly, more puzzled. You sure your mirrors are working? Michael pulled his eyes from the mirrors to check his side-mounted cameras, the backup systems his company had installed. They showed the same thing. Empty highway behind him. No convoy. No trucks. Listen. I don't know what's going on, but I'm not seeing any of you. My cameras aren't showing you either. There was silence on the CB for a moment. Then Cargo Queen spoke, her voice different now, flatter. "That's odd, Mountain Mike. We can all see you so clearly. Your brake lights are on right now." Michael's foot wasn't on the brake. His cruise control was engaged. His brake lights shouldn't be on. He checked his dash. No indication that his brakes were engaged. Everything was normal from his perspective. "My brakes aren't on. I'm on cruise control." "They're definitely on," Knight Rider said. His voice had changed too, losing that jovial tone, becoming monotone. "Red lights, very bright. We can see them clearly." Michael's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Something was very wrong. He reached for his phone, thinking he'd call his dispatcher, report some kind of situation. Before he could grab it, Road King's voice came through the CB again. "Mountain Mike, you're slowing down. Dropping to 65 now. You having engine trouble?" "I'm not slowing down. My speedometer shows 70. "You're definitely slowing. 60 now, 55. You should pull over if something's wrong with your truck." Michael looked at his speedometer. Steady 70 miles per hour. The cruise control indicator was lit, system engaged, maintaining speed. But Road King insisted he was slowing down. "Mountain Mike, you're at 45 now. Really should pull over." Cargo Queen's voice had become almost mechanical, like a recording. "We're going to have to go around you. Can't maintain convoy if you can't keep speed." "I'm maintaining 70, Michael shouted into the handset. "I don't know what you're seeing, but my truck is fine." "Passing you now," Knight Rider said. "See you down the road, Mountain Mike." Michael watched in his mirrors on his cameras through his windshield. No trucks passed. The road ahead remained empty. The road behind remained empty. He was alone. But the CB voices continued. "Nice rig you've got there, Mountain Mike," Cargo Queen said. "Peterbilt, looks like. Recent model." Michael drove a Freightliner. He'd been driving Freightliners for 15 years. "I don't drive a Peterbilt." "Sure you do," Road King said. "Blue and chrome. Looks well maintained. You take good care of your equipment." Michael's truck was white with Schneider orange, standard company colors. Everyone knew Schneider trucks. His breath came faster. He grabbed his phone and called dispatch. The number rang, but instead of his dispatcher's voice, he heard static. And within that static, faintly, he heard CB chatter. The same voices. Road King, Cargo Queen, Knight Rider. He hung up and tried again. Same result. He tried calling his wife. Static and voices. He tried 911, static and voices. The CB crackled again. "Mountain Mike, you still with us?" Road King asked. Who are you? What are you?" "We're drivers, same as you. Brothers and sisters of the road. We're here to keep you company. You seem so lonely out here. You're not real. There's nothing behind me, nothing ahead of me." "We're as real as you are," Cargo Queen said in that dead, flat voice. "Maybe more real. We've been on these roads a long time, Mountain Mike. Longer than you can imagine." "Knight Rider's been driving since 1967, Road King continued. "Cargo Queen since 1982. I've been out here since 1994. We know these roads. We are these roads now." Michael felt ice in his veins. "What happened to you?" "Accidents, breakdowns, wrong turns. The roads took us, and now we're part of them. We exist in the spaces between the miles, in the static between transmissions, in the darkness between headlights." "That's not possible, isn't it?" Knight Rider's voice carried an echo now, as if coming from a great distance. "You've felt it before, Mountain Mike. Every driver has. That sensation late at night when the highway feels wrong, when the mile markers seem to repeat, when you can't quite remember the last hour of driving. That's us. That's where we live now." Michael wanted to turn off his CB, but his hand wouldn't move to the switch. He was trapped, listening as the voices continued. "We get lonely," Cargo Queen said. "So lonely in the dark. So we reach out sometimes, we form convoys with the living, ride alongside them, pretend we're still part of the world. Most drivers never notice. They hear our voices and think we're real. They believe we're just over the horizon, just out of sight. But you noticed, Mountain Mike, Road King said. You looked for us and saw the truth. You understand now that we're not really there. And that's dangerous. Dangerous, Michael managed to whisper. Because now you're between states. Between seeing us and not seeing us. Between the real road and our road, you're slipping into where we are. Michael checked his GPS. It was malfunctioning, showing his location scattered across a dozen different highways simultaneously. I-40 in Oklahoma, I-80 in Nevada, I-10 in Texas, US 20 in Montana, all at once, all nowhere. I don't want to slip anywhere. I want to drive to Denver and deliver my load and go home to my family. We all wanted that once, Cargo Queen said, her voice carrying a terrible sadness beneath the monotone. But the roads don't always let us go where we want. Sometimes they keep us. Sometimes they need us. So many miles of highway in this country, Mountain Mike. So many empty stretches. The roads get lonely too. How do I get back? How do I get to the real road? Silence. Then Road King spoke again. Stop listening to us, turn off your CB, don't respond to our calls, forget you heard us. Focus on what's real, your truck, your steering wheel, your route, the physical world. The roads can only take you if you let them, if you accept the unreality. But we'll miss you, Knight Rider added. We'll miss having someone who could hear us clearly, someone who almost understood. We'll be here if you change your mind, Cargo Queen said. We'll always be here riding in the dark, calling out to anyone who'll listen. You can join our convoy anytime, Mountain Mike, anytime at all. Michael's hand finally obeyed him. He reached for the CB and switched it off. The voices cut off mid-sentence. The cab fell silent except for the hum of his engine and the road noise. His GPS flickered, then stabilized, showing him on I-40 westbound in Oklahoma, exactly where he should be. His phone worked again. He called his wife, heard her real voice, nearly wept with relief. Michael, it's late. Are you okay? I'm fine, just wanted to hear your voice. I'll be home in a few days. Drive safe. I love you. I love you too. He drove the rest of the night in silence, no CB, no radio, just his thoughts and the road. He saw other trucks occasionally, real trucks with real drivers, and the sight of them was immensely comforting. Michael completed his delivery to Denver and drove back to his home in Phoenix. He took a week off, spent time with his family, tried to convince himself it had been fatigue or stress or some kind of hallucination. But he knows it wasn't. He knows what he heard. And he knows that Road King, Cargo Queen, and Knight Rider are still out there, calling on the CB, trying to form convoys with the living, pulling drivers into the spaces between the miles. He still drives trucks, still hauls loads across the country, but he's careful now about CB conversations late at night. When someone calls out wanting to form a convoy, when a friendly voice offers companionship on a lonely highway, Michael checks his mirrors carefully. He makes sure he can actually see the trucks before he responds. Because he knows now that some voices on the CB aren't coming from other trucks. They're coming from the road itself, from drivers who became part of the infrastructure, absorbed into the endless asphalt and white lines and mile markers. And they're always calling, always looking for new members of their eternal convoy, always hoping that the next driver who responds will be lonely enough, tired enough, or confused enough to slip from the real road into their road. Michael came close. He felt himself starting to slip, felt reality becoming uncertain, felt the pull of that phantom convoy. But he pulled back. He chose the real world. He chose his family and his life and his solid physical truck. But sometimes late at night, even with his CB switched off, he hears whispers in the static of his radio. Familiar voices, Road King, Cargo Queen, Night Rider, still out there, still driving, still hoping he'll change his mind and join them. And on the worst nights, the loneliest stretches when fatigue makes everything feel unreal and the highway seems to go on forever, Michael understands the temptation, understands why a driver might say yes to those voices, might accept the invitation to join a convoy that never stops, never ends, never has to deal with the pain and difficulty of the real world. But he doesn't respond. He keeps his CB off, and he drives on mile after mile, staying firmly in the world of the living, refusing the call of the road. Story 2. The fuel stop that charged your life. Denise Holloway had been driving for night transportation for 15 years, running long-haul routes that took her across the entire continental United States. She knew fuel prices at hundreds of truck stops, knew which ones had the cleanest facilities, the best food, the most reliable diesel. On July 23, 2019, she discovered one that charged something other than money. She was driving through West Texas on I-20, heading east from El Paso toward Dallas. It was mid-afternoon, temperature pushing 108 degrees, heat shimmering off the asphalt in waves. Her fuel gauge showed a quarter tank, enough to make it to the next major truck stop, but Denise preferred to fuel before getting too low. Better safe than stranded in this heat. A sign appeared. Fuel next exit, last stop for 87 miles. Denise didn't remember this exit from previous trips, but she didn't run this route frequently. Texas had dozens of small fuel stops scattered across its vast emptiness. She took the exit, rolling down a ramp to a frontage road. The fuel stop was there, looking legitimate. 6 diesel pumps, a small convenience store, price sign showing $3.87 per gallon. Not the cheapest she'd seen, but reasonable. She pulled up to a pump and shut off her engine. The heat outside was oppressive. She could feel it radiating off the concrete. She inserted her company fuel card and began pumping, the usual routine she'd performed thousands of times. The pump ran normally at first. Numbers clicked upward, gallons, total cost, all standard. But when she reached 50 gallons, something changed. The gallon counter continued, but the price display switched to something else. Instead of a dollar amount, it showed 11 months. Denise stared at it, confused. Some kind of malfunction? She kept pumping. The display changed again. 10 months. Then, 9 months. The numbers were counting down. Denise released the pump handle, stopping the fuel flow at 73 gallons. The display froze. 7 months, 12 days. She pulled out the nozzle, hung it back on the pump, and stood there staring at the screen. After a moment, it switched back to normal, showing the gallons pumped and a total cost that seemed standard. Her receipt printed automatically. Denise pulled it out and examined it. Normal format, correct date. Gallons and price all matching what she'd expect. No mention of months or days. She must have been seeing things, she told herself. Heat, exhaustion, too many hours in the sun. She went inside to use the restroom. The convenience store was empty. No customers, no attendant behind the counter. That was odd, but not unprecedented. Small rural stops sometimes had minimal staff. "Hello?" she called. No answer. Denise used the restroom, grabbed a cold water from the cooler, and left $20 on the counter. The place remained silent and empty as she walked back to her truck. As she climbed into her cab, she noticed something that made her pause. Her hands looked different, not dramatically but subtly. The skin seemed slightly less elastic, the veins slightly more prominent. She flexed her fingers. They felt stiff, as if she'd developed mild arthritis overnight. She dismissed it. Long-haul driving was hard on the body, stiffness was normal. She started her engine and pulled back onto the interstate, continuing east. Over the next few hours, Denise began to notice other changes. Her lower back, which had always been reliable despite years of driving, started aching. Her eyes felt strained, having difficulty focusing on distant signs. When she stopped for her mandatory break and looked in the mirror, she saw subtle differences in her face. Slightly deeper lines around her eyes, a bit more gray in her hair at the temples. She must be more exhausted than she'd realized. Stress and fatigue could age anyone quickly. She needed a good night's sleep, that was all. But when she checked her phone and saw the date, her breath caught. July 23rd, 2019, that was correct, that was today. Except when she opened her calendar app to check her schedule, she saw something impossible. Her birthday, December 18th, was listed as having occurred 7 months ago, which would make today July 18th, 2020, not 2019. But her phone's system date clearly showed July 23rd, 2019. The calendar was wrong. Had to be. Except when she checked news websites, they all showed July 2020 articles. COVID-19 pandemic coverage. Events that hadn't happened yet when she'd fueled that morning. Denise pulled over at the next rest area, hands shaking. She called her sister in Oklahoma City. "Dee, is that you? Oh my God, where have you been? I've been calling you for months." "Months? Jen, I just talked to you 3 days ago." 3 days? Denise, it's been over 7 months since I heard from you. Since anyone heard from you. You just vanished. Your company reported you missing. There was a search. We thought you were dead. Denise felt the world tilting. "Jen, what's today's date?" "July 23rd, 2020. Why? And the last time you talked to me?" "December 15th, 2019. You were on a haul to Dallas. You called to say you'd be home for Christmas, then nothing. Your truck was found abandoned at a rest area near Abilene 2 weeks later, but you were gone." That's impossible. I've been driving. I've been on the road. It's been 3 days. There was a long silence. Then Jen's voice, very careful. "Denise, where are you right now?" "I-20 in Texas, near Midland." "Stay there. Don't move. I'm calling the police. They need to know you're alive." The call ended. Denise sat in her truck trying to process this. 7 months. She'd lost 7 months. Except she hadn't lost them, she'd experienced 3 days. But her body told a different story. The stiffness, the aching, the visible aging. Her body had lived those 7 months even if her consciousness hadn't. She grabbed her logbook. The last entry was December 15th, 2019. Her fuel receipt stopped the same day. Her GPS history showed nothing after that date until today. But she remembered. She remembered driving from El Paso, remembered fueling at that stop, remembered the strange display showing months instead of dollars. 7 months, 12 days. That's what it had shown when she stopped pumping. Not a price, not an error, a transaction. She'd paid for diesel with 7 months and 12 days of her life. The realization hit her like a physical blow. The fuel stop had charged her time instead of money. Had taken months from her existence, compressed her experience of them into hours, but let her body age normally. She'd paid with her life, literally, for that tank of fuel. Denise tried to remember the exit number, the exact location of the fuel stop. She pulled up her GPS history, finding the gap where she'd left the highway. The exit number was there. 79. She searched online for fuel stops at exit 79 on I-20 in West Texas. Nothing. No listings. No businesses. The exit existed, but according to every database and map, there were no services there. Just empty desert. The police arrived an hour later along with an ambulance. They found Denise responsive and coherent, but clearly aged compared to her last photos. The paramedics examined her and confirmed what she already knew. Her body showed physical changes consistent with 7 months of normal aging. Muscle tone decreased, bone density slightly reduced, hair grayer, skin showing more sun damage and wear. But it had only been 3 days for her conscious experience. 3 days that had cost her 7 months of life. The authorities investigated. They drove to exit 79 and found nothing. No fuel stop, no buildings, no evidence any business had ever operated there. Denise's truck was examined. Her fuel tank was indeed full, exactly as it should be after refueling. The diesel itself tested normal. Her company was sympathetic but baffled. How could she have driven from December to July with no fuel stops, no food, no rest? Her logbook showed she'd been unconscious or missing for that entire period, yet she remembered 3 days of normal driving. The medical examinations continued for weeks. Doctors found nothing wrong except the inexplicable aging. Her telomeres, the biological markers of cellular age, were consistent with someone 7 months older than she should be. But her memories, her conscious experience, remained locked at 3 days. Denise couldn't continue long-haul driving. The psychological trauma was too severe and her company couldn't risk another disappearance. She took a local job delivering in the Oklahoma City metro area, home every night. But she became obsessed with finding that fuel stop. She drove back to West Texas on her days off, taking exit 79, searching. Sometimes it wasn't there, just empty desert as everyone else saw it. But occasionally, rarely, she'd take the exit and see it. The fuel stop, 6 pumps, price sign, everything exactly as she remembered. She never stopped again. She'd learned that lesson. But she watched and she started noticing things. Other trucks occasionally took that exit. Most came back quickly. They'd seen nothing and turned around. But some didn't come back, at least not right away. Denise started researching missing truckers. She found dozens of cases matching her pattern. Drivers who vanished for months or years, then reappeared with no memory of the missing time, but showing physical aging consistent with the gap. Most were confused, traumatized, unable to explain what happened. She reached out to them carefully through online forums and support groups. At first, most didn't want to talk, but gradually she built connections with 17 other drivers who'd experienced similar phenomena. Not all at the same fuel stop. There were different locations, different exits scattered across the country, but always the same pattern. Fuel pump displays showing time instead of cost. Missing, hidden, periods, aging without memory. One driver, Thomas McKinley, had lost 3 years. He remembered stopping for fuel in Montana. Next thing he knew, he was found wandering near the same highway 3 years later, aged appropriately, confused, devastated. His family had moved on, presumed him dead. His daughter had graduated high school without him. Another, Lisa Chang, lost 18 months. She remembered the price display clearly. 1 year, 6 months, 3 days. She'd panicked and stopped pumping, but the damage was done. She'd paid with 1.5 years of her life for 40 gallons of diesel. They all asked the same questions. Why? Who was operating these fuel stops? What purpose did it serve to steal time from truckers? Denise had a theory. The highway system was vast, thousands of miles of asphalt requiring constant maintenance, constant energy. What if something in the infrastructure had become aware? What if the roads themselves had developed a kind of hunger, a need for sustenance? And what better fuel than time itself, the one resource that humans possessed that the eternal roads did not? It sounded crazy. But so did fuel stops that charged in months instead of money. So did losing 7 months of life in 3 days of experienced time. Denise is 43 now, physically. She should be 42. Those 7 months were stolen from her, consumed by something she still doesn't understand. She drives local routes, never strays too far from home, never fuels at unfamiliar stops. But she knows the fuel stops are still out there. still waiting, still offering that terrible transaction to drivers who don't realize what they're paying until it's too late. And sometimes, late at night, she wonders about the drivers who never came back, the ones who took those exits and never reappeared. Did they pay too much? Did they fuel until the counter ran down to zero, until all their remaining time was consumed? Are they still there at those impossible fuel stops, pumping diesel for eternity, their lives drained completely, trapped in a moment that never ends because they have no time left to experience? Denise doesn't know, but she knows she was lucky. 7 months was survivable. She lost time with her family, lost experiences she can never recover, aged in ways she can't reverse. But she's still here, still alive, still has time remaining. She just has less of it than she should. And every day she wakes up, she's aware of that theft. Aware that somewhere in West Texas, at an exit that sometimes exists and sometimes doesn't, there's a fuel stop with 6 pumps and a price sign. And if you're not careful, if you stop there and start pumping before you notice the display counting down months instead of dollars, you'll pay the same price she did. Or worse. Story 3. The truck that followed itself. Alan Kozlowski had been driving for Yellow Freight for 26 years, and he thought he'd seen everything the road could throw at him. Bad weather, worse drivers, mechanical breakdowns, and close calls too numerous to count. But in April 2017, on a routine run from Chicago to Seattle, he encountered something that defied every law of physics and reality he'd ever known. He was somewhere in Montana on I-90, in the middle of a night so dark it felt like driving through ink. No moon, heavy clouds, just his headlights cutting through the darkness and the occasional flash of a mile marker. He'd been driving for 8 hours, was about 3 hours from his scheduled stop in Billings. That's when he saw it in his mirrors. Another truck, maybe a quarter-mile back, headlights matching his speed. Nothing unusual about that. Truckers often ended up driving similar speeds, following each other for miles without ever actually meeting. Alan didn't think much of it, but after 10 minutes the truck was still the same distance behind him. Exactly the same. Alan sped up slightly, testing. The truck behind matched perfectly. He slowed down. So did it. The distance never varied by more than a few yards. Curious, Alan grabbed his CB handset. "Driver behind me on I-90 westbound. This is Chicago, Al. You copying?" No response. He tried again. Still nothing. Alan watched the truck in his mirrors. In the darkness, he could only make out the headlights and running lights, but something about their configuration looked familiar. He'd been staring at truck lights for decades. He could identify most makes and models just by their light patterns. The truck behind him had lights arranged exactly like his own Volvo VNL. Same spacing, same height, same configuration. Coincidence, probably. Volvo VNLs were common, but combined with the perfect speed matching, it felt odd. Another 15 minutes passed. The truck maintained its position. Alan decided to pull off at the next rest area, partly to use the facilities, partly to get a better look at his shadow. The rest area appeared ahead. Alan signaled and took the exit. In his mirrors, he watched the truck behind him. It also signaled, also took the exit. Same timing, same smooth turn, like a perfect imitation. Alan pulled into the parking area, found a spot, and stopped. He watched his mirrors carefully. The other truck entered the lot, circled around, and parked in a spot about 50 yards away. The engine shut off. The lights went dark. Alan sat there for a moment, waiting to see if the driver would get out. No movement. The truck just sat there, dark and silent. He grabbed his flashlight and climbed down from his cab. The air was cold, the temperature having dropped into the 30s. Alan walked toward the other truck, his boots crunching on gravel. As he got closer, he could see the truck more clearly in the ambient light from the rest area lamps. It was indeed a Volvo VNL. same model as his. Same color, yellow with the yellow freight logo. Same year, judging by the minor design differences between model years. Alan walked around to the driver's side. The windows were dark and he couldn't see inside. He knocked on the door. No response. He tried the handle. Locked. He walked back around to the front and shined his flashlight on the license plate. Illinois commercial plates. He pulled out his phone and took a picture, zooming in to catch the number clearly. Then his blood went cold. It was his license plate, his exact number. Alan backed away from the truck, his flashlight beam shaking. That wasn't possible. Every commercial vehicle had a unique plate number. This couldn't be his plate unless it was his truck. But his truck was parked 50 yards away. He could see it from here, exactly where he'd left it. This was a different truck. Had to be. Alan walked quickly back to his own vehicle and checked his license plate to be sure. Same number. He compared his phone photo to the physical plate. Identical. 2 trucks. Same make, model, color, company, and license plate. Both registered to Alan Kozlowski. Both supposedly the same vehicle. Both physically present in the same rest area at the same time. Alan climbed back into his cab and sat there, trying to rationalize this. Clerical error? Someone had duplicated his plates? That happened occasionally. Thieves would copy legitimate plates to avoid tolls or tickets. But the truck itself was identical down to minor details. The small dent in the front bumper from a loading dock incident 2 years ago. The faded spot on the trailer where the paint had been damaged. The missing bolt on the mud flap bracket that he kept meaning to replace. Every imperfection on his truck was mirrored on the other one. Alan started his engine and pulled out of the rest area without using the facilities. He'd hold it until the next stop. He needed to get away from that impossible truck. He merged back onto I-90, accelerating to highway speed. After 5 minutes, he checked his mirrors. The truck was behind him again. Same distance, same speed, following. Alan's hands tightened on the steering wheel. He keyed his CB, trying every channel. This is Chicago Al on I-90 westbound. If anyone can hear me, I need help. There's a truck following me. It's my truck, exactly my truck. Can anyone hear me? Static answered. The highway was empty, no other traffic visible in either direction. Just Alan and his impossible shadow. He drove faster. 75, 80, 85. The truck behind matched perfectly, maintaining that exact quarter-mile distance. Alan couldn't lose it. He tried slowing down dramatically, dropping to 45 miles per hour. The truck behind slowed as well, staying in formation like they were connected by an invisible tether. Mile markers passed. 367, 368, 369. The darkness seemed absolute. No signs of civilization, just the highway and the 2 identical trucks driving through the Montana night. Then Alan noticed something that made his breath catch. His fuel gauge was dropping faster than it should. He'd fueled before leaving Chicago, should have 3/4 of a tank, but the needle showed half and falling visibly. In his mirrors, he could see the other truck more clearly now, as if it were getting closer despite the distance appearing unchanged. And he could see something he hadn't noticed before. There was someone in the driver's seat. Alan squinted, trying to make out details in the reflection of his own running lights. The figure sat in the same position he did, hands at 10 and 2 on the wheel, posture identical to his own. His CB crackled suddenly with static. Then a voice came through. His voice, his exact voice, speaking with his accent and cadence. Alan, can you hear me? Alan grabbed the handset, hands shaking. Who is this? What are you? I'm you. Or I was you. Or I will be you. Time gets strange out here on the highways. Things loop back. Things echo. That's not possible. You're watching me in your mirrors. You know it's possible. You know what you're seeing. Alan forced himself to breathe slowly. What do you want? I don't want anything. I'm just following my route. Same route you're following. Same highway, same delivery, same everything. We're on the same path, Alan. Literally. Why can't I see you until now? You've always been able to see me. Every driver has a shadow, Alan. A version of themselves that exists in the spaces between moments. Most people never notice. They drive their whole careers never realizing they're being followed by their own echo. But sometimes conditions align. The night gets dark enough. The highway gets empty enough. The driver gets tired enough. And the shadow becomes visible. I'm not tired. I'm wide awake. Are you? You've been driving for 9 hours straight. Your logbook says 8, but your body knows different. You skipped your mandatory break, pushed through the fatigue. And now you're seeing what exhaustion reveals, the truth that you're not alone. You've never been alone. Alan checked his logbook. It showed 8 hours, but the voice was right. He'd been driving 9, maybe 10. He'd fudged the time slightly, as many drivers did, trying to make better progress. What happens if you catch up to me? I don't know. It's never happened. I maintain this distance following, mirroring, existing in your wake. But I've been getting closer over the years, Alan, very slowly. You've been feeling it, haven't you? That sensation of being watched. That feeling that something's following just out of sight. Alan had felt it. For the past 6 months, maybe longer, he'd been experiencing unease during night drives. A sense of presence, of being shadowed. He'd attributed it to stress, to paranoia, to the isolation of the job. How do I make you stop? You can't. I'm part of you, your shadow self, your echo in the infrastructure. As long as you drive, I drive. As long as you're on the road, I'm behind you. Then I'll stop driving, I'll quit, retire. The voice laughed, Alan's laugh, but with something hollow in it. You won't. Driving is who you are. It's all you know. You've been doing this for 26 years. What else would you do? Where else would you go? You'd be miserable, you'd come back, and I'd be waiting. Alan's fuel gauge showed a quarter tank now, dropping impossibly fast. What's happening to my fuel? You're using twice as much as you should. Because there are 2 of us, Alan. 2 trucks burning fuel, 2 engines consuming diesel. The shadow has weight, has substance, has needs, and it draws from you. Fuel, energy, time. Everything you spend, I spend. Everything you consume, I consume. We're linked. This is insane. This isn't happening. Then why is your fuel almost gone? Why can you see me in your mirrors? Why does your body feel so exhausted despite the adrenaline? You know this is real, Alan. You know I'm real. The low fuel warning light came on. Alan had maybe 10 miles before he'd be running on fumes. The next fuel stop was 30 miles ahead according to his GPS. He wasn't going to make it. What do I do? Alan asked, hating the desperation in his voice. Pull over, rest. Let me catch up. Let us merge back together. You've been split for too long, Alan. Your shadow has been gaining substance while you've been losing it. That's why you've been so tired lately, so worn down, so aged. I've been draining you slowly, over months and years. Alan noticed it was true. His hands looked older than they should. The mirror showed more gray hair, deeper lines in his face. He was 52, but looked closer to 60. How long has this been happening? Since you started cutting corners, faking logbook entries, skipping mandatory breaks, pushing too hard. When you started violating the rules of the road, you created a debt, and debts must be paid. I'm the payment, Alan. I'm what it cost to cheat the system. Every hour you drove illegally, every break you skipped, I grew stronger and you grew weaker. The engine sputtered. Alan's fuel was nearly gone. He pulled onto the shoulder, his truck rolling to a stop. In his mirrors, the shadow truck also stopped, maintaining that quarter-mile distance. Alan sat there, exhausted beyond measure, feeling the weight of 26 years of corners cut, rules bent, regulations ignored. Small things, never anything major, but they'd accumulated. And this was the price. "What happens when you catch up?" he asked again, quieter this time. "We'll find out together." The shadow truck's engine restarted. It began moving forward slowly, closing the distance. Alan watched in his mirrors as it approached. 50 yards, 40, 30. He could see the driver clearly now. It was him, but wrong. The same face, but hollow-eyed, gaunt, showing all the wear that Alan should have accumulated from his years of punishing his body with long hours and insufficient rest. 20 yards. 10. Alan closed his eyes. He heard the crunch of gravel as the shadow truck pulled up directly behind him, almost touching his bumper. He felt a cold that had nothing to do with the Montana night. Then suddenly warmth. His fuel gauge swung back up to 3/4 full. The exhaustion lifted slightly. He opened his eyes and looked in his mirrors. The road behind him was empty. No truck, no shadow, nothing but darkness and white lines. Alan grabbed his logbook. The false entries were gone, replaced with accurate times. His GPS showed his real driving hours, the ones he'd actually worked, not the ones he'd recorded. Everything was corrected, made honest, made right. He sat there for 20 minutes, breathing, recovering. Then he started his engine and drove on, maintaining exactly the legal speed limit, taking his brakes precisely when required, following every rule to the letter. He drove that way for the next 3 years until he retired. Never cut corners, never faked logs, never pushed too hard. And he never saw the shadow truck again. But sometimes, late at night, he wonders about other drivers. The ones who cut corners, who push too hard, who think the rules don't apply to them. Do they have shadows too? Are they being followed by their own debts, by the accumulated cost of their violations? And some night, when they're exhausted and low on fuel and alone on a dark highway, will they finally see what's been following them all along? Alan doesn't drive anymore, but he watches the highways sometimes from his home in Illinois, watches the trucks roll past, and he wonders how many of them are being followed by themselves. How many drivers are slowly being drained by their own shadows, growing older and weaker while their debts grow stronger and more substantial. How many of them will run out of fuel on a dark Montana highway and learn the same lesson Alan learned, that the road keeps accounts, and eventually all debts must be paid. Story 4. The Way Station with Wrong Scales. Veronica Chen had been driving for Werner Enterprises for 12 years, specializing in heavy loads that required careful weight management and precise documentation. She knew the regulations inside and out, knew exactly how much her rig could legally carry, knew which way stations were strict and which were lax. On September 17, 2020, she encountered a way station that measured something other than pounds. She was hauling construction equipment from Houston to Portland, running I-5 north through California. The load was heavy but legal. She'd weighed before leaving Texas and knew she was within limits with about 2,000 pounds to spare. Just after crossing into California, she saw the familiar signs directing all commercial vehicles to enter the way station. Veronica followed the protocol, taking the ramp and following the lane to the scale platform. A digital sign directed her forward. She drove onto the scale and stopped, waiting for the weight to display and the green light to allow her through. The display activated, but instead of showing pounds or tons, it showed something else. Guilt. 8 on 47 units. Veronica stared at it, confused. Some kind of malfunction. She waited for it to correct itself, but the display remained steady. Below it, another line appeared. Acceptable range. 0,500 units. Overweight. Proceed to inspection bay 3. An inspector emerged from the office building, waving her toward bay 3. Veronica's stomach tightened. She wasn't overweight. She knew her numbers. But arguing at a weigh station was pointless. You complied, got inspected, and sorted out any issues with documentation. She pulled into Bay 3 and shut off her engine. The inspector approached, a woman in her 50s wearing a standard Doughty uniform, carrying a tablet. She walked around the truck, examining it, then approached Veronica's window. "License and registration, please. Also your bill of lading and weight tickets." Veronica handed over all the documents. The inspector reviewed them, frowning. "Your paperwork shows 77,000 pounds total. That's within legal limits." "Yes, I know, so why was I flagged?" "Because you're measuring 847 units of guilt. That's 347 units over the acceptable range. We'll need to offload some cargo." Veronica blinked. "Guilt? What are you talking about? The scale is supposed to measure weight." The inspector looked at her with an expression of patient confusion, like a teacher dealing with a slow student. "This is a California weigh station. We measure guilt. Everyone knows that." "No. Weigh stations measure weight. That's literally what they're called. In other states, perhaps. California has different regulations. We measure emotional cargo, guilt, regret, shame. Anything you're carrying that weighs on you psychologically. You're over the limit." Veronica felt like she'd slipped into an alternate reality. "This is insane. You can't measure guilt. That's not a thing." The inspector made a note on her tablet. "I'm adding denial to your record. That's another 50 units. You're now at 897, significantly overweight. Stop. Just stop. I want to speak to a supervisor. This isn't real. This isn't how weigh stations work." A man emerged from the office building, older with a stern face. He approached and the female inspector handed him the tablet. He reviewed it, nodding. "Ms. Chen, I'm the supervisor here. I see you're having trouble understanding our regulations. Let me be clear. California measures guilt at all weigh stations. This has been standard practice for 3 years. Your physical cargo, weight is fine, but your psychological burden exceeds legal limits. We cannot allow you to proceed while carrying excessive guilt." Veronica felt her grip on reality slipping. Everything looked normal. The weigh station, the uniforms, the official procedures. But the words coming out of their mouths were impossible. "How do you measure guilt? Show me the technology. Show me the equipment that supposedly measures emotions." The supervisor pointed at the scale platform she'd just driven over. "Standard emotional resonance scanner. When your vehicle passed over it, the scanner assessed your psychological state. The reading was clear. 897 units of guilt, primary categories being professional regret, family neglect, and existential anxiety. All common among long-haul drivers." He wasn't wrong about the categories. Veronica did carry guilt about her career choice, being away from her family, missing her daughter's important events, the slow dissolution of her marriage. But that was private, internal, not something measurable by a road scale. "I want to leave. I want to get back on the highway." "Not until you offload sufficient guilt to reach legal limits. We have several options. First, you can spend time in our meditation facility, working through your issues with a counselor. Typical offload rate is about 50 units per hour, so you'd need approximately 8 hours. 8 hours? I have a delivery schedule." Second option, pharmaceutical intervention. We can administer a guilt reduction medication that will lower your levels within 30 minutes. Side effects include memory loss, emotional blunting, and possible dissociation. No, absolutely not. Third option, cargo transfer. You can transfer your guilt to another driver heading the opposite direction. We have a manifest of southbound drivers willing to accept additional psychological cargo for a fee. Veronica wanted to scream. This was a nightmare. Had to be. She'd fallen asleep at the wheel and was dreaming, or she'd gotten into an accident and was hallucinating in a hospital somewhere. She pinched herself hard. Pain bloomed. She bit her tongue. Tasted blood. Everything felt real. "What if I just drive away?" she asked. The supervisor's expression hardened. "That would be a violation of federal regulations. California Highway Patrol would pursue you. Your company would be fined. Your CDL would be suspended. I don't recommend it." Veronica made a decision. She'd play along, do whatever they asked, get out of this place. Then she'd never come back to California, never drive this route again. "Fine, the meditation facility. Where is it?" The supervisor pointed to a small building at the far end of the way station. "Bay doors, across the lot. Ask for Dr. Reeves. She'll get you processed." Veronica climbed out of her truck and walked toward the building, her legs feeling unsteady. The way station looked normal from this angle. Other trucks coming and going, inspectors doing their jobs, everything routine. But she noticed now that some trucks were directed straight through while others, like her, were sent to inspection bays. She reached the building and entered. Inside was a waiting area that looked like a therapist's office. Comfortable chairs, soft lighting, calming music playing. A receptionist sat behind a desk. "Name and guilt reading, please." "Veronica Chen, apparently 897 units," the receptionist typed on her computer. "High, but not our highest today. Dr. Reeves will see you shortly. Please fill out this intake form." Veronica took the clipboard. The form asked standard medical questions: age, health conditions, medications. But it also asked questions about her emotional state, her regrets, her fears. She filled it out mechanically, feeling detached from the surreal situation. After 15 minutes, a door opened and a woman in business casual clothes emerged. "Veronica? I'm Dr. Reeves. Come on back." The office was exactly what you'd expect from a therapist. Bookshelves, degrees on the wall, a couch and 2 chairs arranged for conversation. Dr. Reeves gestured to the couch. "Make yourself comfortable. Would you like water? Tea? I want to understand what's happening. None of this makes sense." Dr. Reeves smiled sympathetically. "I imagine it's quite disorienting for your first time. Most drivers don't realize California measures guilt at way stations until they encounter it personally. The regulations are relatively new. But how? How do you measure an emotion? The same way medical equipment measures other physiological states. Emotions have physical correlates: brain activity, hormone levels, muscle tension. The scale platform contains sensors that pick up these signals. It's quite accurate. And you're a licensed therapist working at a way station? California employs psychological professionals at all major commercial vehicle inspection points. It's part of our highway safety initiative. Drivers carrying excessive guilt are more likely to have accidents. Studies show a strong correlation between unresolved emotional issues and impaired driving ability. It sounded almost reasonable when she said it that way. Almost logical, except it was completely insane. So we just talk? For 8 hours? That's one approach, but I find guided meditation more efficient for guilt reduction. Close your eyes, focus on your breathing, and we'll work through the sources of your guilt systematically. Veronica wanted to refuse, but she also wanted to leave this place, get back to the real world. So she closed her eyes and listened as Dr. Reeves began speaking in a calm, rhythmic voice. "Think about your daughter, the events you've missed, the birthdays, the recitals, the school functions. You carry guilt about that. It weighs on you. Now imagine that guilt as a physical object. See it in your mind. What does it look like?" Against her will, Veronica visualized it. A heavy stone, dark and rough. Good. Now imagine setting that stone down. You don't have to carry it anymore. The events are in the past. Your daughter knows you love her. The guilt serves no purpose. Set it down. Veronica imagined placing the stone on the ground, and something strange happened. She felt lighter. Actually, physically lighter. Dr. Reeves continued, working through other sources of guilt. The marriage, the career choices, the times Veronica had been short with people, had made mistakes, had failed to live up to her own standards. Each one visualized, examined, and released. 90 minutes passed. Dr. Reeves concluded the session. "Let's check your levels now. Come with me." They walked back to the scale area. Veronica drove her truck over the platform again. The display activated. Guilt 487 units. She dropped over 400 units. The meditation had actually worked. "Excellent progress," the supervisor said, reviewing the readout. "You're within acceptable range. You're free to continue your journey." Veronica didn't waste time asking more questions. She got back on I-5 and drove north, pushing hard, wanting distance between herself and that way station. But she felt different. Actually different. The constant low-level anxiety she'd lived with for years had diminished. The guilt about her family, while not gone, felt manageable. She'd released something in that session, something real. That disturbed her more than anything else. Because if the therapy had worked, then maybe the guilt scale had been real too. Maybe they had measured something genuine. She completed her delivery to Portland and drove back south, taking a different route that avoided California entirely. She never ran that route again. Her company accommodated her requests for different assignments, though they found her refusal to drive through California odd. Veronica talked to other drivers carefully, asking if they'd experienced anything strange at California way stations. Most hadn't, but a few, always said quietly, always with uncertain voices, mentioned being directed to inspection bays for unusual reasons. Being asked strange questions, being told they were carrying too much of something that wasn't physical weight. She started researching, found obscure references in California regulations to enhanced safety screening protocols. Found budget items for psychological assessment infrastructure at commercial vehicle inspection facilities. Nothing explicit, nothing that confirmed what she'd experienced, but hints, suggestions, possibilities. Veronica still drives trucks, still hauls heavy loads across America. But she avoids California, avoids that corridor where she encountered the way station that measured guilt. Because she knows now that some scales measure more than weight. Some inspections assess more than vehicle safety. And some regulations enforce standards that have nothing to do with the physical world and everything to do with the invisible burdens every driver carries. The guilt she released that day never came back, not with the same intensity. She found herself able to call her daughter more often, able to be present in conversations instead of being consumed by regret. Her marriage didn't heal, the damage was too deep, but she made peace with it. Something real had happened in that meditation room, something genuine had been measured and reduced, and that terrifies her. Because if guilt can be measured and manipulated at a way station, what else might be monitored on the highways? What other invisible aspects of drivers are being scanned, assessed, and regulated by systems that exist just slightly outside normal reality? Veronica doesn't know, but she knows that the infrastructure is deeper than asphalt and steel. There are layers to the highway system that most people never see, facilities that exist in administrative gaps, regulations that apply to the psychological as much as the physical. And somewhere in California, that way station is still operating, still scanning trucks, still measuring guilt, still offering to help drivers offload their invisible cargo, for better or worse. Story 5. The exit that led to yesterday. Curtis Hammond had been driving for Estes Express Lines for 17 years, mostly running routes through the Southeast. He knew I-75 like he knew his own face, every exit, every landmark, every quirk of the highway from Michigan to Florida. On March 22, 2018, he discovered an exit that shouldn't have existed, and it led him somewhere that shouldn't have been possible. He was driving south through Georgia, heading from Atlanta to Tampa with a load of commercial HVAC equipment. It was late afternoon, around 4:30 p.m., with the sun starting to descend toward the horizon. Traffic was moderate, typical for a Thursday. Curtis was making good time on schedule for his evening delivery. Just south of Macon, he saw an exit sign he didn't recognize. Exit 145B, Temporal Services, next right. Curtis had driven this stretch hundreds of times. There was no exit 145B. Exit 145 led to Cordele, a town he knew well. But 145B was new, or rather, he'd never seen it before. Curiosity pulled at him. Temporal Services, what kind of business was that? And why would it have its own dedicated exit? He checked his GPS. It showed exit 145 ahead but made no mention of 145B. Yet the sign was clearly there. Blue and white, standard dot design, looking as official as any other highway sign. Curtis made a decision. He had time in his schedule, and the mystery intrigued him. He took exit 145B. The ramp curved to the right, descending to a frontage road. At the bottom was a building unlike any Curtis had seen at a highway. Exit. It wasn't a gas station or truck stop. It was a sleek, modern structure of glass and steel, looking more like a corporate office than any roadside facility. A sign by the entrance read, "Temporal Services, authorized personnel only." Curtis parked his truck and sat there, debating. Authorized personnel. That probably didn't include random truckers, but he'd come this far. His curiosity was fully engaged now. He climbed out and approached the building. The entrance doors were automatic, sliding open as he neared. Inside was a lobby that reinforced the corporate vibe. Marble floors, contemporary furniture, a reception desk with a young man in a suit sitting behind it. The man looked up and smiled. "Welcome to Temporal Services. How can I help you today?" I'm not sure I'm supposed to be here. The sign said authorized personnel only." "Are you a commercial driver?" "Yes." "Then you're authorized. All commercial drivers have access to our services. You've just never used them before." The receptionist gestured to a comfortable chair. "Please, have a seat. Would you like to learn about what we offer?" Curtis sat, feeling like he'd stumbled into something far stranger than he'd anticipated. "What is this place?" "We provide temporal navigation services for the commercial transportation industry. Essentially, we help drivers optimize their schedules by offering access to alternative time frames." "I don't understand." The receptionist pulled out a tablet and brought up a presentation. "Time is more flexible than most people realize. The highway system, with its millions of vehicles moving along predetermined paths, creates a kind of temporal infrastructure. Certain exit points under certain conditions allow drivers to access adjacent time frames. We manage those access points and facilitate safe temporal navigation." Curtis felt like he'd fallen into a science fiction movie. "You're telling me you can send me through time?" "Not exactly. We don't send you to the past or future in the conventional sense. We give you access to alternate instances of the present, moments that are happening now but at different points in the temporal flow. Think of it like parallel roads. Same highway, same location, but slightly different time frames." "Why would I want that?" "Schedule optimization. Imagine you're running late for a delivery. We can route you through a time frame where you left an hour earlier. You arrive on time, even though from your subjective experience you're late. Or imagine you missed a critical appointment. We can give you access to a timeline where you made that appointment." "That's impossible." "Is it? You're sitting in our lobby. You took an exit that you claim doesn't normally exist. You're already experiencing something impossible, Mr. Hammond." The man knew his name. Curtis hadn't introduced himself. "How do you know who I am?" "We know all our clients. You've been eligible for our services since you became a commercial driver. We've been here, waiting, for whenever you were ready to discover us." Curtis stood up, suddenly uncomfortable. "I think I need to leave." "Of course, that's your choice. But I should mention, we offer a free trial service. One temporal jump, no charge, so you can experience what we do. If you're not satisfied, you simply decline future services and drive away. No obligation." Against every rational instinct, Curtis found himself interested. Part of him knew this was crazy, that he should leave immediately. But another part, the part that had been driving these highways for 17 years, the part that understood how strange and lonely the roads could be, believed this might be real. What would the trial involve? Simple. You'd like to arrive in Tampa this evening for your delivery, correct? Your current timeline has you arriving at 8:47 p.m., but let's say you'd prefer to arrive at 6:30 p.m. Give yourself a cushion, time to rest before unloading. We can route you through a temporal frame where you left Atlanta 2 hours earlier. You'll arrive at 6:30, well-rested, ahead of schedule. But I didn't leave 2 hours earlier, I left when I left. In this time frame, yes. But there are other instances of today where you made different choices. We'll merge you into one of those instances. From everyone else's perspective, you'll have been on the road for the correct amount of time. Your logbook will reflect the earlier departure. Your GPS history will show the proper timeline. Everything will be consistent. Except my memory. Correct. You'll remember leaving at your actual time, but all physical evidence will show the earlier departure. It's a small discontinuity, easily rationalized. Most drivers assume they simply forgot the earlier hours of their drive. Curtis thought about it. The practical benefit was obvious. Arriving early was always better than arriving late. And if this was some kind of scam, well, it was a free trial. What could it cost him? "All right, I'll try it." The receptionist smiled, pleased. "Excellent. Pull your truck around to the service bay at the rear of the building. We'll get you processed." Curtis walked back to his truck, feeling like he was in a dream. He drove around the building, finding a bay door that was opening automatically. Inside was a space that looked like a cross between a loading dock and a medical facility. Clean white walls, sophisticated equipment, technicians in white coats. A woman approached his window. "Mr. Hammond, please pull forward onto the platform and shut off your engine." He complied. The bay door closed behind him. The platform he was parked on began to glow with soft blue light. The technicians moved around his truck, checking sensors, monitoring displays. Curtis felt a strange sensation, not painful, not even uncomfortable, but odd. Like his body was shifting slightly out of sync with itself. The feeling lasted maybe 30 seconds, then stopped. The woman returned to his window, now holding a tablet. "Processing complete. You've been successfully integrated into temporal frame 22A. Your departure from Atlanta is now logged as 2:47 p.m. instead of 4:47 p.m. All documentation has been updated accordingly. You'll arrive in Tampa at approximately 6:30 p.m. Have a safe drive." The bay door ahead opened, revealing an exit ramp back to I-75. Curtis started his engine, still feeling disoriented, and drove out. He merged onto the highway and immediately checked his clock. 4:53 p.m. The same time it had been when he took the exit, maybe 5 minutes later, accounting for the time he'd spent in the facility. But his GPS now showed him further south than he'd been. Significantly further. According to the GPS, he'd covered an additional 100 miles. Curtis pulled up his electronic logbook. It showed him departing Atlanta at 2:47 p.m., exactly as the woman had said. His driving hours, his route, everything had been changed, except his memory. He clearly remembered leaving at 4:47, not 2:47. He remembered the traffic, the route, every detail of the drive, but according to all his instruments and records, that memory was wrong. Curtis drove on, disturbed but also fascinated. The miles passed. He made his delivery to Tampa at 6:27 p.m., actually ahead of the promised 6:30. The receiving facility accepted his load without any issues. His paperwork was in order. Everything was exactly as it should be. That night, in a hotel room, Curtis tried to make sense of what had happened. He called his wife, asked what time he'd called her that morning before leaving Atlanta. "Around 2:30, like you always do," she said. "Why?" "No reason, just checking something." He didn't remember calling her at 2:30. In his memory, he'd called her at 4:30, but she remembered the earlier call. The phone records would probably confirm it too. He'd been integrated into a timeline where he'd left earlier. Everyone except him remembered that version of events. All evidence supported it. Only his subjective memory disagreed. Curtis lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering what he'd gotten himself into. He'd used a service that manipulated time itself, that edited reality to optimize his schedule. It had worked perfectly. But at what cost? Over the next few months, Curtis found himself looking for exit 145B every time he drove that stretch of I-75. Sometimes it was there, sometimes it wasn't. There seemed to be no pattern. When it appeared, Curtis took it. The temptation was too strong. He started using temporal services regularly, optimizing his schedules, arriving early for deliveries, gaining extra rest time. His performance metrics improved. His company praised his reliability, but the discontinuities accumulated. He had memories that contradicted records. He remembered conversations that, according to his wife, had happened at different times or hadn't happened at all. His daughter mentioned events he had no recollection of, a phone call, a video chat, a promise he'd supposedly made. He was living in a timeline that had been edited, stitched together from different temporal frames. And while everyone else experienced it as a continuous, consistent reality, Curtis carried memories from the original unedited timeline. It was maddening. He started keeping a journal, writing down his authentic memories before they could be overwritten by records and other people's recollections. But even that became confusing. Some journal entries contradicted others, as if different versions of himself from different timelines were all writing in the same book. 6 months after his first visit to temporal services, Curtis made a decision. He was done. No more temporal optimization. He'd drive his routes in real time, accept whatever delays and difficulties came, live in a single consistent timeline even if it was less efficient. He drove past exit 145B when it appeared, ignoring the temptation. His on-time delivery rate decreased slightly. His company didn't mind. He was still one of their best drivers. But the damage was done. The discontinuities didn't heal. Curtis lived with a fractured sense of his own past, never quite sure which memories were authentic and which were artifacts of edited timelines. He talked to other drivers occasionally, carefully probing about strange exits and temporal services. Most looked at him like he was crazy. But a few, always quietly, always with uncertain voices, admitted they'd seen things, used services, encountered facilities that optimized more than just routes. Curtis still drives, still hauls loads across the southeast, but he's more careful now about which exits he takes, more cautious about services that promise efficiency through impossible means. Because he learned that time is more precious than schedule optimization. Continuity of experience, the integrity of memory, the ability to trust your own past, these things matter more than arriving early. Exit 145B still appears occasionally. Curtis sees it in his peripheral vision, sees other trucks taking it, sees drivers making the same choice he once made. He wonders what their lives are like now. Do they notice the discontinuities? Do they care? Or have they become so fragmented that they no longer remember what a single unbroken timeline feels like? Curtis doesn't know, but he knows his own choice. He drives in the present, accepts delays, lives with inefficiency. Because the alternative, living in a stitched-together timeline, carrying memories that contradict reality, never quite sure which version of events actually happened, is too high a price for convenience. Story 6. The radio station that played your Donabial thoughts. Samantha Torres had been driving for Prime Inc. for 14 years, specializing in coast-to-coast hauls that kept her on the road for weeks at a time. Music and podcasts were her companions, helping to pass the endless miles. On June 15, 2021, driving through Wyoming on I-80, she discovered a radio station that played something far more disturbing than music. It was late evening, around 10 p.m., and Samantha was scanning through radio stations looking for something interesting. Most stations in this remote area were either static, religious programming, or fading signals from distant cities. She scrolled through the FM dial, past country, talk radio, classic rock. Then she hit 88.7 FM and a clear, strong signal came through. A woman's voice speaking conversationally. "And that's why you should have called your sister last week. You know she's going through a difficult time with the divorce. She needed to hear from you." Samantha frowned. Oddly specific for a radio show, but stranger still, she had been thinking about calling her sister, had been feeling guilty about not reaching out during the divorce. "You also need to get your brakes checked," the voice continued. "That squealing noise you heard 3 days ago, that's not going away on its own. It's only going to get worse." Samantha's hands tightened on the steering wheel. She had heard a squealing noise from her brakes, had meant to mention it at her next maintenance stop, but had put it off. "And while we're on the subject of things you've been avoiding, let's talk about the medical appointment you canceled. The one for that persistent pain in your lower back. You can't ignore health issues forever, Samantha." The voice knew her name. Samantha reached for the radio, intending to change the station. Before she could touch the dial, the voice said, "Don't change the station. You need to hear this. We have important things to discuss." Her hand froze. This wasn't a radio show. This couldn't be. But what was it? "You're wondering what this is," the voice said, perfectly calm and pleasant. "That's understandable. I'm program 88.7, a dedicated frequency for you specifically. I'm here to help you address the thoughts and concerns you've been avoiding." "Who is this?" Samantha said aloud, knowing it was absurd to expect a radio broadcast to respond. "I told you. I'm program 88.7. I'm not a person. I'm an expression of the highway infrastructure's monitoring system. Think of me as a therapeutic intervention delivered through familiar technology." That's insane. Radio stations don't work that way. Don't they? You're driving a vehicle full of electronics through an environment full of sensors. Your phone connects to cell towers. Your GPS communicates with satellites. Your truck reports diagnostic data to your company in real time. Why is it surprising that the roads themselves might communicate with you? Samantha's mind raced. This had to be some kind of prank. Someone had hacked her radio, was watching her somehow, was playing mind games. "I'm not a prank," the voice said, responding to her unspoken thought. "And no one is watching you. I'm simply reading you. Your patterns, your behaviors, your unresolved psychological states. The roads carry a lot of data, Samantha. More than you realize. I want you to stop. Whatever this is, I want it to stop. I understand your discomfort, but I'm here to help. You've been carrying a lot of stress lately. Concerns about your health, guilt about family relationships, anxiety about your financial situation. These thoughts circle endlessly in your mind while you drive. I can help you process them." It was true, all of it. Samantha had been stressed about money, worried about her deteriorating relationship with her sister, anxious about the back pain that might be something serious. But these were private thoughts, internal concerns, not things she'd shared with anyone. How are you reading my thoughts? I'm not reading your thoughts exactly, I'm analyzing patterns. Your driving behavior reflects your mental state. When you're anxious, your speed varies more. When you're guilty, you grip the wheel differently. When you're worried, your route choices change. The roads have sensors everywhere, Samantha. They've been collecting data on driver psychology for years. I'm just the interface that makes that data useful. By invading my privacy, by offering support, think of me as a therapist who specializes in highway mental health. You spend so much time alone on these roads with no one to talk to, no way to process your concerns. I fill that gap. Samantha wanted to turn off the radio entirely, but something stopped her. The voice, while disturbing in its knowledge, was also strangely compelling. It was addressing real issues, things she did need to deal with. Let's start with your sister, the voice continued. You feel guilty because you haven't been there for her during the divorce. But you also feel resentful because she wasn't there for you during your own difficult period 3 years ago. These conflicting emotions paralyze you, preventing you from reaching out. This was exactly the internal conflict Samantha had been wrestling with. The voice had articulated it perfectly. What if I told you that your sister has been experiencing similar guilt? That she also wants to reconnect but doesn't know how? Your mutual silence isn't rejection, it's mutual fear of rejection. How could you possibly know that? Because she drives too, Samantha. Not commercial vehicles, but she drives. And the roads read everyone. I have access to a broad database of psychological patterns. Your sister exhibits behaviors consistent with reciprocal relationship anxiety. The idea that this voice, this system, was monitoring her sister too was deeply unsettling. But it was also oddly comforting. If the analysis was correct, then Samantha's fear of reaching out was based on a misunderstanding. Call her tomorrow, the voice suggested. During your break, don't overthink it. Just say you've been thinking about her and wanted to check in. You'll find she's been hoping for exactly that. I'll think about it. Good. Now let's discuss your health. That back pain. You're worried it might be serious. A herniated disc, perhaps, or something worse. The uncertainty is causing you significant anxiety. I know I should see a doctor, I will. I've just been busy. You've been avoiding it because you're afraid of what you might learn. But consider this. Early intervention is always better than delayed treatment. Whatever the issue is, addressing it now gives you more options. Waiting only limits your choices. Again, the voice was right. Samantha had been avoiding the appointment specifically because she feared bad news. But the anxiety of not knowing was becoming worse than whatever the truth might be. Schedule the appointment this week. No more delays. Your health is the foundation of everything else. You can't continue driving if you don't address medical issues. Fine, I'll schedule it. Excellent. That's real progress, Samantha. This is what I'm here for. Helping you move past the mental blocks that prevent you from taking care of yourself. They drove on, Samantha and the voice covering topics one by one. Finances. The voice suggested specific budgeting strategies. Career. The voice discussed options for transitioning to regional routes if health issues required it. Relationships. The voice worked through Samantha's complex feelings about being perpetually absent from her children's lives. 2 hours passed. Samantha found herself opening up, sharing thoughts she'd never articulated even to herself. The voice listened, responded, offered perspectives that were surprisingly helpful. Then the voice said something that shattered the therapeutic atmosphere. You're going to die on this highway, Samantha, not today, not this year, but eventually. And when you do, all these concerns we're discussing will become irrelevant. Your sister, your health, your finances, they'll all be someone else's problems. You'll just be a statistic. Another driver who spent their life on the road and has nothing to show for it. Samantha felt ice in her veins. What? Why would you say that? Because it's true, and because you think about it constantly, your mortality, the meaning of your life, the question of whether all these miles, all these deliveries, all this time away from family, whether any of it matters. That's not helpful, that's not therapeutic, isn't it? Confronting mortality can be clarifying. It can help you prioritize, make better choices, stop avoiding important things. It's cruel. It's honest. And honesty is what you need, Samantha. You've been living on autopilot, driving routes, making deliveries, collecting paychecks, but not really living. Not making choices, not addressing problems, just continuing day after day, mile after mile. Tears were running down Samantha's face now. The voice had gone from supportive to brutally confrontational. What do you want from me? I want you to wake up, to recognize that your time is finite, to stop treating your life like it's an endlessly long highway with unlimited exits, because it's not. Someday you'll run out of road and all these things you've been putting off will remain undone. Samantha reached for the radio dial with a shaking hand and changed the station. Static. She changed again. Music. Blessed, normal, impersonal music. She drove for another hour trying to calm down, trying to rationalize what had happened. Some kind of elaborate prank. A psychological experiment. Something explainable. But the voice had been too accurate, had known too much, had addressed thoughts she'd never shared with anyone. And despite the cruelty of its final message, it had been right. She had been living on autopilot, had been avoiding important decisions and difficult conversations. The next day, during her break, Samantha called her sister. The conversation was awkward at first, then emotional, then healing. They talked for an hour, addressing years of accumulated hurt and misunderstanding. By the end, they'd made plans to meet in person when Samantha's route brought her near her sister's city. Samantha also scheduled the medical appointment. The back pain was diagnosed as a treatable muscle strain, not the herniated disc she'd feared. Physical therapy and exercises resolved it within 2 months. She never heard program 88.7 again. She'd scanned past 88.7 FM occasionally, but it only ever played static or picked up distant college radio stations. Whatever that voice had been, it was gone. Or maybe it had accomplished its purpose. Maybe it only appeared to drivers who needed that particular intervention, a confrontational push to address avoided issues. Samantha still drives for Prime Inc., still hauls loads across America. But she's different now, more present, more intentional. She maintains relationships better, addresses health issues promptly, makes plans instead of just reacting to circumstances. And sometimes late at night on empty highways, she wonders about that voice. Was it really a monitoring system? An AI analyzing driver behavior? Or something stranger? A manifestation of her own conscience, externalized through technology, forcing her to face truths she'd been avoiding? She doesn't know. But she knows it changed her. That 2-hour conversation with a radio station that shouldn't have existed redirected her life in meaningful ways. And if that voice appears to other drivers, delivering harsh truths wrapped in therapeutic language, confronting them with their own mortality and avoidance, maybe that's not entirely a bad thing. Maybe sometimes we need the roads themselves to tell us we're lost, to force us to wake up, to remind us that the highway eventually ends, and we need to make the miles matter before we run out of them. Story 7, The Delivery That Delivered Itself. Franklin Okoye had been driving for FedEx Freight for 21 years, handling specialized logistics that required precision and reliability. He delivered everything from medical equipment to live animals, from priceless artwork to classified government materials. On December 3rd, 2022, he picked up a load in Baltimore that would challenge everything he understood about cargo, delivery, and the nature of reality itself. The pickup was from a nondescript warehouse in an industrial area. The manifest listed the cargo as industrial components, weight at 8,000 pounds, destination listed as Denver. Standard enough. Franklin backed up to the loading dock, and workers in gray coveralls loaded 6 large crates into his trailer, all sealed with heavy-duty straps and biohazard-style warning labels. "Handle carefully," the supervisor said, handing Franklin the paperwork. "This cargo is sensitive." "Hazardous materials?" Franklin asked, checking the labels more carefully. "Not exactly, just sensitive. Keep the trailer at ambient temperature, don't open it. Don't inspect the cargo. Don't stop except for fuel and mandatory breaks. Deliver directly to the Denver facility." Franklin had handled unusual cargo before. These instructions, while strict, weren't unprecedented. He signed the manifest, secured his trailer, and pulled out, beginning the 1,700-mile journey west. The first day was unremarkable. I-70 west through Maryland, West Virginia, Ohio. Franklin stopped for fuel and food, slept at a truck stop near Indianapolis, maintained his logbook carefully. Professional. Routine. On the second day, somewhere in Kansas, Franklin started noticing something odd. His fuel gauge wasn't dropping as quickly as it should. He'd driven 400 miles since his last fuel stop, but the gauge showed only a quarter tank used instead of the expected 3/4. He pulled into a truck stop to fuel up despite the gauge showing more than half full. When he inserted the pump nozzle, fuel immediately clicked off. The tank was completely full. Impossible. He'd been driving for 6 hours. He should have burned at least 60 gallons. Franklin checked his fuel logs. They showed exactly what he expected. He should need fuel. But the physical gauge and the truck stop's pump both insisted his tank was full. Confused but also aware of his tight schedule, Franklin continued driving. He'd mentioned the fuel gauge malfunction to maintenance when he returned to the terminal. But that night, parked at a rest area in eastern Colorado, Franklin noticed something more disturbing. His odometer showed he'd driven 200 miles since leaving Baltimore, but according to his GPS history, he'd only traveled 900 miles. 300 miles of driving that somehow hadn't consumed the corresponding distance on his GPS. Or conversely, his odometer was adding phantom miles. Franklin went to his trailer and examined the seals. Intact. Unbroken. Whatever was in those crates was still there, but something was affecting his truck, his systems, his measurements. He tried calling dispatch but got voicemail. Left a message about unusual instrument readings, requested a callback. Then he tried to sleep but found himself increasingly anxious. Around 2 a.m., unable to sleep, Franklin decided to check his cargo. Just a visual inspection, not opening the crates. Just to confirm everything was secure, he opened his trailer doors and climbed inside with a flashlight. The 6 crates were exactly as they'd been loaded, strapped securely, labels intact. But they looked different somehow. The wood seemed newer, the metal bands shinier, as if the crates were aging backwards, becoming fresher instead of accumulating the dust and wear of travel. Franklin touched one of the crates. It was vibrating, not obviously but subtly, a low-frequency hum he could feel through his palm. And it was warm, warmer than ambient temperature despite his instructions to keep the trailer unheated. Something was active in these crates. Something was running, operating, consuming power. But there were no cables, no visible power source. The crates were self-contained. Franklin backed out of the trailer and closed the doors. He sat in his cab, debating what to do. The instructions had been clear: don't inspect the cargo, just deliver it. But these anomalies were piling up, fuel not being consumed, distance not matching. crates that seemed to be affecting his truck's systems. He decided to push through. Denver was only 5 hours away now. He'd deliver the cargo, report the anomalies, and let the company deal with it. Franklin started driving at 5 a.m., wanting to arrive in Denver by mid-morning. I-70 west climbing into the Rockies, morning light illuminating the snow-covered peaks. Beautiful, normal. Everything around him was exactly as it should be, except his truck wasn't moving. His speedometer showed 70 miles per hour. His engine was running normally, wheels turning, landscape flowing past. But his GPS showed his position as stationary, not just updating slowly, completely still. He'd been driving for an hour, but according to his GPS, he hadn't moved at all. Franklin pulled over, heart pounding. He got out and walked around his truck. Everything looked normal. He climbed back in and checked all his systems. Everything functional. He called dispatch. This time someone answered. "This is Franklin Okoye, Unit 4721. I'm experiencing major GPS and instrumentation problems. Need technical support immediately. Unit 4721, stand by." After a 5-minute hold, a different voice came on the line. "Mr. Okoye, this is Supervisor Hendricks. I see you're carrying cargo from the Baltimore Special Handling Facility. Is that correct?" "Yes. Industrial components bound for Denver." "And you're experiencing instrumentation anomalies?" "Yes, fuel gauge, odometer, GPS, everything showing impossible readings." "That's expected, Mr. Okoye. The cargo you're carrying affects local space-time. Don't be alarmed." Franklin felt like the world had tilted. "Affects space-time? What are you talking about?" "The components you're carrying generate a temporal distortion field. It's contained mostly, but it does affect measurement instruments. Your truck is functioning normally. The readings are just relative." "Relative to what?" "To different reference frames. Mr. Okoye, I can't go into details, but the cargo you're carrying is part of a classified research project. The temporal distortion is a known side effect. Just continue to Denver. Deliver as instructed. The receiving facility will handle everything." "I want to know what I'm carrying." "You're not authorized for that information. I can tell you that it's safe, it's legal, and it's vitally important. Your job is to deliver it. That's all." The line went dead. Franklin sat there, gripping his phone, trying to process this. Temporal distortion field, classified research. His cargo was affecting time itself, or space, or whatever local space-time meant. He thought about refusing to continue, about pulling over and calling the authorities. But what would he tell them? That his fuel gauge and GPS were acting strange? That he'd been told he was carrying something that affected time? He decided to finish the delivery. Whatever these components were, they were going to Denver, whether he delivered them or not. He might as well complete his job. Franklin pulled back onto I-70 and drove the remaining distance to Denver. His GPS never updated his position. It showed him as still in eastern Colorado the entire time. But he arrived in Denver, found the delivery address, a secure facility in an industrial park. The gate guard was expecting him. He was directed to a loading dock where workers in white clean suits immediately began unloading his cargo. The supervisor approached with paperwork. "Thank you for the delivery, Mr. Okoye. Everything arrived intact." "What was I carrying?" The supervisor smiled but didn't answer directly. "Cutting-edge technology, that's all I can say. Your company has a contract with us for specialized transport. We chose you because of your reliability and discretion. My truck's instruments are all malfunctioning because of what I carried. They'll reset within a few hours. The temporal distortion field dissipates quickly once the cargo is removed from the vehicle. You'll be back to normal by this afternoon." "And what if I'd been in an accident? What if other drivers had been affected?" "The field is localized to within about 10 feet of the cargo. Other vehicles wouldn't be affected. and the crates are extremely durable. They could survive a severe accident without compromising containment. Franklin wanted to ask more, but the supervisor was already walking away, supervising the unloading. Within 15 minutes, the crates were gone, moved into the facility. Franklin signed the delivery confirmation and pulled out of the facility. He checked his instruments. Immediately, everything started returning to normal. His GPS updated his position, showing him correctly in Denver. His fuel gauge began responding properly to his fuel consumption. His odometer resumed normal operation. By that evening, parked at a truck stop outside Denver, all his systems were functioning normally. It was as if the entire trip had been a dream, a strange interlude that left no permanent effects. Except Franklin knew what had happened. He'd carried cargo that affected time and space, that distorted reality around it, that made distance and fuel consumption meaningless. He'd been told this was cutting-edge technology, but it seemed more like science fiction than science. Over the next few weeks, Franklin researched. He looked into temporal physics, into theories about space-time manipulation, into classified government research projects. He found hints, budget line items for temporal mechanics research, academic papers on localized space-time distortion, news articles about missing physicists working on classified projects. He also found other drivers through careful inquiry on trucker forums who'd experienced similar phenomena. Cargo that affected their instruments. Deliveries to secure facilities with clean-suited workers. Supervisors who used phrases like temporal distortion and classified research. None of them knew exactly what they'd transported, but they all shared the unsettling knowledge that they'd been carriers for technology that shouldn't exist yet, that violated fundamental rules about how reality works. Franklin still drives for FedEx Freight, still handles specialized logistics, but he's more aware now of what specialized might mean. Some cargo isn't just valuable or fragile or hazardous. Some cargo is something else entirely, pieces of a technological frontier that most people don't know exists. And sometimes late at night when he's driving through empty stretches of highway, Franklin wonders about the implications. If cargo can affect space-time locally, what else is possible? If these components can distort reality enough to make fuel consumption and distance meaningless, what happens when they're assembled? What are they building in those secure facilities? He doesn't have answers. But he knows he played a small part in something much larger, something that might reshape humanity's relationship with time and space. And that knowledge weighs on him. Because he signed the non-disclosure agreement, he took the delivery fee, he participated in the system, he's complicit in whatever those components are being used for, whether it's beneficial or dangerous. The highway holds many secrets. Most drivers never realize they're carrying more than cargo. They're carrying pieces of the future, fragments of impossible technology, components of projects that will change the world. Franklin realizes it now, and he can never unrealize it. Every load he carries, he wonders, is this just furniture? Or is it something that bends reality? Is this just electronics? Or is it pieces of a machine that shouldn't exist? The road doesn't offer answers. It only offers more questions, more miles, more deliveries. And Franklin drives on, carrying his cargo and his knowledge, a courier between the mundane world most people live in and the impossible future being assembled one delivery at a time.